Hello everyone, can you hear me? I am trying a new mic. Can everyone hear me? Hello Sarah. Hello Paula. Am I coming through clear? Or is it too loud? Y'all can hear me good. The other mic was not working, so I have a different mic now. And I want to see if it skips or if you guys can distinctly hear every word. So how is it sounding so far? Thank you, SL. Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. We are coming up on chapter 5. And this chapter seems to be about a new character, Philip Stone, who is a workaholic doctor, as we learned in our sneak peek. Philip Stone stood and escorted the young couple to the door of his office. Friday morning, he would be opening on their 3-pound son, who had been born 10 weeks premature. Baby Blaine had a defective heart valve, a not uncommon defect. Over the course of his career, Philip had done this same procedure more times than he could remember. Still, he had never performed it on his son, and both parents looked as if they were about to cave in from anxiety and fear. "I'll see you Friday," Philip said in his most reassuring voice. The wife paused and held his look. Her own eyes were rimmed with tears. "Dr. Stone, do you pray?" He debated how to best answer her. When he was a kid, he had memorized the prayers his mother and father had taught him. She was Catholic, and his father wasn't much of anything. Grandmother had given him a Bible for his high school graduation. He still had it somewhere. "Annie," the husband urged his wife toward the elevator. "This is our first baby," the young mother said, her voice quivering. "He means the world to us." "I pray," Philip said, after a lengthy pause. He hadn't recently, but there had certainly been times over the last 39 years when he'd called upon God, not always in the politest of terms or in ways that might technically continue prayer, but it was as close as he got. "Then pray on Friday," she urged before turning away and joining her husband. The couple entered the elevator. The husband placed his arms around his wife's slim shoulders. Notice how she leaned into him as though the love and strength of her mate was the only thing that could keep her upright. Their baby's chances were good. Philip didn't anticipate complications. Excuse me. The boy would do fine, God willing. He spent the next hour doing paperwork and was surprised when he glanced up and saw that it was already after 7. He had meant to leave earlier. Old habits die hard, harder than he realized. Finding balance in his life had demanded discipline and restraint. It was much too easy to fall back into the trap of staying late at the hospital and completely immersing himself in his work. He saved lives, and these babies needed him. What he had discovered, though, to his chagrin, was that he wasn't much good to anyone if his entire focus remained in the hospital. After he and Heather had split, he realized the problem was his. At the time, he had felt she wanted more of him than he was willing to give her. After the breakup, another realization had hit him. Working such long hours, he completely lost sight of himself. Every day at the hospital, he became enmeshed in his life and death drama of what was happening around him, taking no time to reflect on or absorb the impact of these events. He needed to get away, to think, make time for himself, and for a life outside the hospital. Since then, he'd given a lot of his thoughts and tendencies to be so completely single-minded and focused on his work. He realized this was more to the... I'm sorry, I lost track. He realized there was more to his personality trait of his than just pure dedication. Self-analysis wasn't comfortable or especially easy, but he knew that if he was ever going to find fulfillment in life outside of work, then he was going to need to change. Sound familiar, everyone? Very good, Sarah. He hadn't got to the point where he was comfortable lowering his guard, but he was working on that. One of the first things he had done was to set a hard and fast rule that he had to leave Seattle General before 7 o'clock. For a while, he had cast about to find something other than work to occupy his time. That was when he stumbled upon the idea of sailing. He enjoyed the water, and being on the Puget Sound or Lake Washington looked exhilarating. So after much research and a series of sailing lessons, he had bought his own sailboat and made a friend in the bargain. Philip got along well with his sailing instructor, and the two often went out together for a couple of hours. They weren't bosom buddies or anything, but it felt good to hang out with Fred. Philip spent many a summer evening on Lake Washington, soaking in the sunshine, the warm breeze. He had been invited to join a poker game with a group of other physicians. He had accepted and enjoyed the camaraderie. Cards had never been his forte, and he lost far more than won, but being able to laugh with the guys was all the compensation he needed. The funny part was that despite the fact he always enjoyed himself, he often had to talk himself into going. At heart, he was still a loner. He logged off his computer, ignoring the long list of emails requiring his attention. They could easily wait until the morning. Most evenings he had grabbed a quick meal in the hospital cafeteria. The food wasn't half bad. It was tastier than anything he could make himself, and it was a damn sight more nutritious than anything he could pick up at a fast food place. As he headed down the wide corridor, he recognized several nurses. Since he had started at the hospital, a few of them had made it clear that they wouldn't be opposed to seeing him outside of work. Rule number 1. Philip was not to get involved with anyone in the medical profession. That was a lesson he had learned early on in his career, and it stuck. How do I sound, everybody? Has there been any skipping? I really hope I hear no, there hasn't been any skipping. I hope this mic is going to do the trick. If there is skipping, let me know, but if you can hear every word, I hope so, I hope so. Every now and again, he wondered about Heather. They had met in medical school, fallen in love, moved in together, and decided to marry. Oh, good. Paula said there are no skips. Good. But they planned to marry when they finished their residencies. That was the original plan. But they both worked crazy hours and barely saw each other. With so little time together, it felt like they slipped out of sync. They practically had to start at square one on the rare days they both had off at the same time. He knew they were drifting apart, but he didn't realize how far until one day he returned to the apartment only to find it empty. Heather had moved out. He tried to talk to her, to reason things out, but she wouldn't listen. Fine, whatever. He played it cool for a month or so, gave Heather her space, and waited for her to come to her senses. Only she never did. The next thing he heard, Heather, the love of his life, had married another doctor and moved out of the state. Just like that. It took him 6 months to get over the shock of it. He dated again, but the results were mostly the same. Marcia Lentz, a reporter who worked for the Seattle Times, Philip had dated for almost a year before she called it quits. It shocked Philip because he thought their relationship was going along just fine. Sure, he worked long hours, but that was to be expected with his profession. They actually discussed marriage at one point. When Marcia walked out, she claimed marriage was out of the question. With tears in her eyes, she told him he was remote and too hard to get close to. She said he worked ridiculous hours, but she could live with that if he wasn't so closed off. They were actually together. The ugly scene had lingered in his mind for months afterwards. His problem, Philip had reasoned, was that he didn't understand women. It took 8 months for Philip to realize that Marcia had pretty much hit the nail on the head. Philip was married to the hospital, and there was more to it than that. He hadn't viewed himself as remote or distant. He had never been one to share his troubles or wear his heart on his sleeve. But that didn't make him emotionally inaccessible, as both Marcia had accused. And yet his tendency to keep his thoughts and feelings to himself seemed to be a problem. His friends were few, but that was the way he liked it. Life shouldn't be a popularity contest. After Marcia, he more or less swore off dating for a few years. With determination, he started building a life outside the hospital, but it was a constant struggle not to revert back to his old habits. Every so often, he longed for a woman to hold, but he honestly felt as if he just didn't know where to start. It was up to him, or to give her what she needed. When it came to romance relationships, he was at a loss as to how it should be. The bearing of souls, the shared intimacies, all that seemed beyond him. For someone others considered smart and intelligent, he was having a difficult time figuring this out. This evening was a good example. The Blaines had entrusted their son's life to him, and they were relying on his skill to correct their infant son's heart. If he succeeded, the boy had a good chance of having a normal. He admired the way the parents leaned on each other. They were partners, friends, lovers. Philip wanted that kind of relationship too, a wife and family of his own. Only he didn't know if it was possible for him. At 39, he was set in his ways. The trouble with that, most of the women he met came with baggage. Either they were divorced and embittered with 2 or 3 kids, or they were like him, married to their careers. On Thursday morning, Philip woke to the sound of his alarm. He assembled into the kitchen and got a cup of coffee brewing while he grabbed his workout clothes. He was at the gym lifting weights. All the woman he had met Monday in the hospital elevator, the one who arrived with the 2 girls and the preemie hats. She was alone this morning. Apparently, the friend she usually worked out with didn't make it today. They made eye contact, and she stiffened and looked away. Philip figured he deserved that. He had taken one look at her daughter and recognized trouble, and he probably had been a bit brisk as a result. He didn't envy, oh, what was her name again? Leslie, Lindy, no, Libby. He wondered if she knew her daughter was pregnant. He doubted it. In fact, she seemed completely oblivious. Unfortunately, the girl couldn't be much older than 13 or 14. He might have misread the situation, but he doubted it. Whoa. Oh, now we know what is wrong with the one girl, don't we? The one that's always sad. We sure know what her issue is now. He had been around pregnant women far too long not to recognize the symptoms. The teenager wore loose clothes, but they couldn't hide what he found obvious. He had gave her high marks for being clever, though. He suspected that she was 6 or 7 months along. She hid it well. His guess was that Libby didn't have a clue. It was unfair to blame the mother, but clearly she wasn't paying nearly enough attention to her daughter. Well, Libby was in for a shock, and the girl probably wasn't getting the medical attention she needed either. This could be a formula for disaster. He toyed with the idea of saying something right there in the elevator, but had changed his mind. He didn't want to overstep his bounds. This wasn't his business. Still, he was concerned for the young teen and the possible consequences for her and her baby. Hey, Philip, you coming tonight? Distracted from his thoughts, Philip turned to face his friend, pediatrician Michael Everett. He set the weight down while his mind unscrambled his friend's comment. Poker? We're meeting at Richie's place. You coming or not? Coming, and this time I intend to win my money back. Richie was Michael's brother-in-law from the first marriage, Hannah's brother. Michael had taken his wife Hannah's death hard. For months, the pediatrician hadn't been himself. He holed up completely, refusing invitations and doing only what was necessary. Grief had crippled him. His staff and friends had worried he would never recover. And then, a year or so after Hannah's death, Michael had met Macy. Michael slapped him across the back. "Good. See you at Richie's at 7. See ya." Richie and Michael routinely worked out together, and Richie stood next to him with a weight in each hand. Richie had laid down the weight. "Did you hear?" Michael asked Philip, grinning sheepishly. "Macy's pregnant." Philip slapped his fellow physician across the back and experienced a twinge of envy. "Congratulations." Michael nodded, looking pleased with himself. "Yeah, we just found out. See you tonight." "Tonight," Philip echoed. He was happy for his friend. Michael was a good man and a wonderful doctor, popular with the staff and respected. Philip had met Macy once and rather liked her. Really, it was difficult not to. She was like a beam of sunshine. He had met Hannah too and felt she would have approved of Michael's choice. When he finished his regular workout, Philip headed back to the condo. He didn't need to be at the hospital for another hour. He showered, got dressed, and decided on a second cup of coffee. He took a fresh mug from the cabinet and noticed the flower on his windowsill. He had bought it at home from the office because it looked sad and unhealthy. He hoped the sunlight would help it as he placed it in the kitchen window. Instead, it had withered completely. It had died. And that takes us to chapter 6. Oh my goodness. I did not see that coming about the girl being pregnant. I did not see that. Kind of makes sense why she's been so sad. But here's the thing. He thinks that that young lady is Libby's daughter. So it goes, what's that adage? Don't judge a book by its cover till you read the inside. So what is that telling us? He's judging her already, thinking one thing when it's really another. So yeah, don't judge a book by its cover. And I am going to take a short little break. Chapter 6 is very, very short, y'all. I got to show you something real quick. My daughter is making these bookmarks now. She made several for me, and I love this. Roses are red, pages are torn. This book I'm reading is practically, and I'm not going to say the word, you put in that word yourself. It's just a poem about the romance novels that women like. And it is a beautiful bookmark. And I did want to share this beautiful mug she made me. A book a day keeps reality away. So here we are reading a starting over book on someone else's reality. And we don't have to think about ours. And she did my name on it with the books. Isn't that gorgeous, y'all? TZED Games Podcast. But she is going to make a new one with my new name on it, guys. It will say TZED Style. So she is going to change it for me. But it's such a beautiful cup. And I didn't put any cocoa in it tonight. I wasn't really in the mood for cocoa, so I just got some water and soda. I'll be right back, y'all. Try to find myself again, but life is one big riddle.
of the future and what's been. Guess it's the way it goes, and I will never know why you let me go. Look to the left, look to the right, nothing can stop me in the night, like I am leaving all the bad stuff and trying to remain so strong. I know it's good if I'm wrong. I got it, I gotta go, go, go. Underneath the better days, go, go, go. Throw my emotions out, go, go, go. Running
Oh, it always is nice to take a sip. Get thirsty when you read. Chapter 6. The job situation looked bleak. Libby didn't have a single prospect on the horizon and was getting more depressed by the day. She'd knitted so many baby hats that she knew the pattern by heart. At the rate she was going, she would have 200 hats completed by the end of the month. Sharon Jennings, the nurse she had met on Monday, had mentioned that volunteers were needed in the nursery. She had also said that the rocking the babies was comforting. Libby needed something, anything, that would soothe her troubled spirit. Finding inner peace appealed to her, and rocking newborns was a whole lot cheaper than buying a bunch of books on the subject. What she found difficult to explain was the drawl she had towards these babies. She certainly hadn't felt a twinge of it when her ex-husband had been cajoling her to get pregnant. But now the pull felt magnetic. She longed to hold an infant in her arms. It was so completely counter to what she knew about herself. But here it was. Well, she didn't have anything better to do with her time. She might as well give it a try. Thursday morning, after working out at the gym, she decided to stop off at the hospital and fill out the application. The form was lengthy, and it took far longer than she expected. Most job applications were shorter than this. She was finger-pointed as well. Apparently, a complete background check had to be done and submitted before she could be approved. Sharon Jennings phoned the following Monday morning to tell her she had been cleared to volunteer at the hospital. "Oh, great, thanks." Libby assured there wouldn't be a problem. She didn't have so much as a jaywalking ticket. "Well, when would you like to start?" Libby wasn't sure. In the few days since she submitted the application, she had time to think about it, and she realized that being with the newborns might not help. While she craved the comfort and peace Sharon had promised, she was afraid being around newborns might make her long for a child of her own. She was already past her prime, childbearing years, although it was common these days for a woman to give birth in her late 30s or even in her early 40s. But with no man in sight, it wasn't likely to happen to her. Rocking infants could very well be dangerous to her mental well-being. Doubts had already gnawed away at her self-confidence. What she didn't need was a constant reminder of what she had given up with the divorce. How different her life would have been if she had given Joe what he wanted. She didn't need to add guilt or regret. If Libby was going to volunteer for a worthy cause, she should consider working at a legal clinic. The problem was that most people who walked into free clinics weren't interested in setting up estate planning, trust funds, or foundations. And that was her expertise. Could you be here at noon? Sharon wasn't taking no for an answer. Uh, we could really use your help. Sure. Libby captivated before she could stop herself. Oh dear, what was she thinking? Sharon's gratitude was immediate. Wonderful, I'll see you then. At precisely 12 o'clock, Libby arrived at the nursery. Sharon had her put on a hospital gown over her street clothes, and then she brought her into the nursery. Oh, thank you, Paula. I love this book too. It's getting more and more interesting as we go. And then she brought her into the nursery. Pick up the infant and start rocking, was all the instruction Libby was given. The nursery was a cacophony of squalling babies. The noise was deafening. Which one? Libby asked, not knowing where to start. She hadn't even begun, and she was already in over her head. Whichever one you like. Libby chose the closest baby, a fat, healthy 8-pound baby boy with a thatch of dark brown hair. The surname was Berzota. Italian, she suspected. Libby carefully lifted the infant from the soft bed and settled into the wooden rockers. The baby cried all the louder until Libby started rocking. The heated red face relaxed, and the baby's lower lip trembled as he gradually settled down. Libby didn't know any lullabies, so she softly sang the only song she could think of, which was Rick Springfield's hit from the 80s. It might not have been Brahms, but her low voice appeared to do the trick. Within minutes, baby boy Berzota was sound asleep in Libby's arms. She placed the infant back in the crib and reached for another little boy. He was downright angry, his face twisted in a scowl. You've been fed, young man, Libby whispered, rocking gently. The chart tells me your mother fed you no more than 30 minutes ago. It's nap time. Baby Jason wasn't as easily appeased as baby Berzota had been. Libby rocked and softly sang to him as well, easily slipping from one rock song to another, from Springfield to Springsteen. It surprised her that she remembered so many of the words. As a teenager, after her mother died, Libby had drowned her grief in music, listening to her cassettes and later CDs for hours on end. They had been long before iPods. She'd lie in bed, immersed in the songs that helped her drown out the world and her loss. Her father never complained about the volume. He seemed to know she needed it loud. When he married Charlene, that had changed. Charlene had claimed Libby would damage her hearing, and it wasn't good for her. Libby had dutifully turned down the music. It took the equivalent of an entire CD of songs before baby Jason fell asleep in her arms. Nurse Jennings was right. Even in the midst of a dozen wailing infants, Libby felt a sense of peace, a sense of rightness. A calm washed over her, and all she did was rock babies. The worries that had weighed her down since she had lost her job seemed to slowly fade. It was as if she'd entered another world, a welcoming island where all that mattered was holding a baby in her arms and singing softly. Now, now, she said gently, picking up a third baby. The world isn't such a bad place. Your mommy and daddy are going to love you so much. She placed the newborn over her shoulder and gently patted his back. Sharon returned some time later. So how'd it go? Great. The nursery was almost silent. What time is it? Sharon glanced at her wrist. 3. I'm surprised you stuck around this long. Libby blinked. I had been here for 3 hours? Sharon had been in and out. Libby had noticed her several times but hadn't paid much attention. 3 hours, Sharon repeated. Unbelievable. Libby had no idea where the day had gone. You did a great job, the nurse said, and gave Libby's shoulder a reassuring pat. I hope you'll come back. Oh, I will. There's a sign-up sheet on the other side of the door. We'd love to have you return soon. Oh, I hit my mic. Sorry, guys. Libby filled the name in on the clipboard and left. Walking back to her condo, she had the urge to talk to someone. She knew Robin would be busy, but she reached for her cell anyway. Prosecutor's office, her friend answered curtly. It's Libby. I just finished rocking babies at the hospital. What? Robin demanded impatiently. I told you this morning I was going to volunteer at the hospital, remember? The line went silent. You rocked babies. Yeah, for 3 hours. It didn't seem nearly that long, and it was so peaceful. Again, the line went silent. Let me get this straight. You spent the last 3 hours rocking newborns, and I loved every minute. Robin snickered. I'm worried about you, Libby. Very, very worried. And that takes us to chapter 7. And we are going through this book rather quickly, and it is getting more and more exciting as we go. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of it. I know Paula loves it. She is really into this book, as I am. I know I am. I love it. And I cannot wait to see what's going to happen in the next chapter. But let me know how much you love this book and what you think about the new character, Philip Stone. He was introduced in chapter 5. And so I see the writer, Debbie McComber, put in Dr. Stone, Philip Stone, who is a workaholic doctor. And then we have Libby, who is a workaholic attorney. Both of them led similar lives, both of them divorced, both of them not doing well in relationships. And I have a feeling it's going to get really exciting, especially when Mr. Stone finds out it's not Libby's child. But go ahead and let me know in the comments what you think. I appreciate you all coming in, and I will see you next Wednesday. Make sure to hit that thumbs up for me. I would appreciate it. And I will see you next Wednesday right back here for Starting Now.
Remember I was laughing in all the photos but now it looks like acting, like we were fiction in a book. Guess it's the way it goes, and I will never know why you let me go.